The east side of the state has Eastern Carolina Safety and Health Conference. The west side of the state has the Western Carolina Safety and Health Conference. So we got a lot of friends in the state that can help out. So, been a friend of Michael Behm's for quite a while, since we started going east and back and forth and the like. And while I could introduce him, there's a tradition here of family members introducing each other. Evidently last year a father introduced a son. So this year Brody Behm is going to join us up here to introduce his dad. So Brody is a freshman here at Appalachian State. He's in Downton Hall, which is right down the way. This is normally earlier than he wakes up.
Ready.
But he says he's going to be a psychology major, but he has to get through Sean and I first. So, Brody, tell us about your dad.
Great father, professor at ECU. He's been there for 19 years. That's about it. Welcome to the stage. Come on up.
Michael Behm, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks. Well, thanks. Yeah, so I'm Plan B, right? So you're going to get the refund from Tim on the. Do you mind if I put some stuff here so I can kind of like spill water on you and things like that? My jokes are better than Sean's. Gotta hope so. My gosh, we're in a lot of trouble if they're not. Well, so I'm from East. So are there any ECU graduates in the room? East Carolina. What mistake did you see on Dr. Ludwig's and Dr. Bergman's slides?
Dr. Ludwig's slides.
Oh, Dr. Ludwig's slides.
There you go.
What mistake was on there?
East Carolina State University.
Wow, I'm so happy to be here at Appalachian Polytechnic University. Yeah, no, we recall that all the time. We are the best kept secret east of the Rocky Mountains, quite frankly, not east of the Appalachians, east of the Rockies. So I'll tell you a little bit about our program. I'll tell you about kind of what we do, but I'm also going to talk a little bit about, I'm not a psychologist. Probably everyone's saying, oh my gosh, thank goodness. Well, we always start off with a question, what do you see? Not here, but there. What do you see? What's your first impression? What angst do you have? Right? Many people are probably quoting an OSHA standard in their head. Oh yeah, 1910 point blah, 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 blah says. All right, so what do you see? Well, we'll get to what do you see. How do you react? What are your problem-solving skills? So my talk is about human error, no bad design. Now, I didn't make this title up. Does anybody know where I stole this title from? Where did I steal this title from? Anybody know? It's from a book you should all have that you should all read. It is. No, it's a great book, and it's not by Mike Behm or Tim or Sean. Who's the book by? Don Norman. Ashley's one of the graduates of the Master of Science in Occupational Safety program. I didn't plant her here. So Don Norman's book, The Design of Everyday Things. You should Google Don Norman. You should know about what he's doing. Have you ever heard of the Norman doors? The Norman doors. Have you ever went to a door and didn't know whether to push or pull it? Do you feel stupid when you do that? Well, if you read Tim's book, you shouldn't feel that way. I love Tim's book. Tim doesn't mention the word design in his book, I don't think at all. I don't think the word design is even in his book. But his book is all about design. By you getting here today, following the instructions that were given to you, you were designers. Okay? think about that word. Because when we think about design and safety through design, NIOSH calls it prevention through design. We think, oh yeah, that's something engineers do. That's something architects do. If you believe that, we want to change that today. Okay? So push or pull, right? Design looks exactly the same, but two different things. What work are we designing for our employees that are error provocative? That's an interesting word, error provocative. We'll give you lots of homework today as well, too. Wouldn't be an opening presentation without giving homework. What is design? What is design? I do 8-hour workshops on safety through design, so I'm so glad they gave me just 7 hours here to talk with you today. What is design? What is design? I asked an architect this question one time, and he said, if you try to define design, that is a bad question because you're automatically constraining it. Design is about creativity. It's about innovation. It's about doing new things. And when I talk with architects and engineers, which in other countries like the UK, Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, they have legislation in place which actually requires designers to do something about life cycle safety and health. The architects and the engineers and those designers tell me safety is exactly the opposite of what I do. Safety constrains me. I create things. Today we want to talk about the marriage of safety and design, and how they can coexist and arrange conditions for your workers to be successful. So what is design, right? We think about the physical environment a lot when we think about this design word. But again, Tim's book, you should read Tim's book if you haven't read it. He does not mention the word design, but it is all about design. The socio-technical environment. Well, that's a fancy word. What is that a fancy word for? Work. It's just a fancy word for work. It's about how workers interface with their environment. Isn't that what work is? At its simplest form. Okay. Design is messy. Guess what? Work is really messy too. That's all this says. It's just a slide that shows you design is messy. This is from an architectural textbook. What does safety do? Now this is where you have to participate. What does safety do? Whether you're a safety and health professional, whether you're a crew leader in charge of your crew with regards to safety and health, whether you're a human resources professional, what does safety do? Creates awareness. Pretty good.
Mitigate risk.
Mitigate risk. Creates a culture. Wow, that's a loaded one. I'm going to let the psychologists take care of that one. Right. So if you look at the American Society of Safety Professionals or the American Industrial Hygiene Association, which I think are two pretty good organizations to kind of take a look at, if you look at globally the scope and functions of safety, they'll probably tell you this. Now, I bet everyone in this room is really, really good at recognizing and identifying hazards and risks. When I showed you that first picture, you were probably making a list in your head of all the things that were wrong with that particular picture. Right? But I'm here today to say and challenge you, and you as plural, your organizations, are not really good at anticipating hazards and risks and arranging conditions for your workers to be successful. I think when I read about this particular summit, and this is my first time here, like Jim Cramer, first time call. I was on the Jim Cramer show as a caller. I said, Jim, first time, long time, right? That's what you know when you're the first time caller. First time, long time, booyah. So you, plural, your organizations probably don't anticipate very well. That's the challenge. My journey in safe design. Now, whenever someone, an opening or any presentation, they talk about my journey, it usually starts with failure. Guess what? Mine starts with failure. Boy, I have a lot of failures. I'll tell you about one. In the 1990s, I was working for a large multinational global corporation, and the 90s were good. If you remember the 90s, we were getting things like corporate bonuses. Oh my gosh, we don't get them in academia, do we? No. But you think we were building things, we were buying new companies, we were expanding. Brownfield sites, it was great. Corporate health and safety, we had this great idea. We're going to go out to the new facility 3 weeks before startup. So rather than going out, after the first month or so, we're going to go out 3 weeks before, because before the employees get there, we're going to save lives. We're going to do great things. So I went out. In 2 days, I had a laundry list of about 25 or 30 things for the new plant manager to fix. My closing meeting, I sat down with him and he said, so you're telling me that your corporation just hired me to run a facility that has 25 or 30 things that I have to fix, that you just built? Oh, well, the light bulb went on. Oh, maybe I wasn't early enough. Maybe I wasn't planning efficiently. Maybe we need to do something differently. Now, I was going to play the video, but I'm not. Your homework is to go find the cat. Who's familiar with the character Captain Hindsight? Don't be shy now. Come on. Who's familiar with Captain Hindsight? You good. Just one. And I know my son is. Captain Hindsight flies in. Now, I don't recommend South Park for your children, although this video is pretty good, this minute and a half. So Captain Hindsight flies in, the building's burning, and he said, oh, well, they should have put a fire escape there, and they shouldn't have done that. They should have reinforced the structure there, and they shouldn't have built that building there so you get your trucks in. Okay, my work is done. And he flies away. He has the eyeball here, and it's on his cape, and he flies away. Sometimes the function of safety reminds me of Captain Hindsight. We come in and we point things out. And then we leave, and it's everybody else's problem to fix. We need safety to be better problem solvers, is the point of Captain Hindsight. Who's ever seen this before? I hope you have. What is this called? The hierarchy of controls, typically. I like to call it the hierarchy of ideas. Hierarchy of ideas, right? And so when you typically look, so these are different colors, right? So you have your stuff at the top, right? We want to get rid of things. We really want to get rid of hazards and risks. That's really, really hard, by the way. Or we want to change something. We want to change the way we work. Tim's book is all about change, changing the way you work. I remember when I first saw Tim give a presentation, I thought, oh boy, this psychologist talking about behavior. I'm going to ask him a question about design. I couldn't, because he answered my questions about design. Everything he talked about was about design. This is huge. Whoops. Change. Change the way we do things. Change the way we operate. Change the way we communicate. Change the way we schedule things. Yes, the physical environment, but also the way we work in the socio-technical system, right? Too many times we are down here. We do things like instructions and signs and training. A great thing for a safety professional to do is document what you do for a month and then categorize it based on the hierarchy of controls. What an interesting assignment. Get back to me in a month. I look forward to your field results. I would bet, and I know, it's almost all at the bottom. Giving people PPE and doing training and awareness, all are good things. Can we shift? In Australia, they call it, we want to work above the line. Let's work above the line today. The line is where the gray becomes white. We want to engineer things differently. We want to change the way we work. We want to try to eliminate hazards and risks. We want to arrange conditions for workers to be successful. It's about anticipation and foreseeability. Again, really difficult. We'll talk about how to get there. Right. Now this conference, right, and I love that they used the word elevate. Well, you know, we're 3,500 feet up and we're on the 4th floor. You can't get much elevated than this. They've achieved their goal already. I love it. But no, this is what it's about elevate your approach to behavioral safety. Okay? Again, I'm not a psychologist. So what influences behavior? What influences behavior? Huge mental health. As the field of occupational health and safety expands, we're thrown different things like the pandemic, mental health, another job enlargement opportunity to learn more and do more. At the fundamental essence, what influences behavior? The environment. Ding, 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 ding. I should have gave. Whoa, uh-oh. I know the psychologists in the room are going to be like, oh, what's this guy doing now? No psychologist can answer this. What is this?
People in the environment.
Behavior is a function of people and their environment. For $20, who came up with this? Again, no psychology. Some German psychologist, I'll probably butcher his name, Kurt Leuven. Is that? So when I think about behavior, I think about that very simplistic formula. I think about the environment quite a bit. And I think, well, look, folks, the E, right? We're talking about the E up on the top here, above the line. We're talking about the environment, the conditions under which people work. James Reason said, you cannot change the human condition, but you can change the conditions under which people work. The P is always going to be part of this because you're working in a complex socio-technical system. The P is part of everything. But the P is also the environment, let's talk about that. Where does it fit? Because you write perfect rules, don't you? You all write perfect rules, right? Right? Then you go out and you apply them. Boy, we got to get that thing off the top because, no, I'm kidding. Right? I actually saw this on LinkedIn like yesterday. I'm like, oh, I'm going to use that. That's a good one. Have you ever heard the phrases work is imagined versus work is done? Of the non-East Carolina University MSOS students and alumni, who's heard of work is imagined versus work is done as a concept in the field of occupational safety and health? Eric Holnagel is another book you should read and another author that you should try to find about. Eric with a K. There's a double L and a single L. Forget which one it is, but you'll find it. Eric talks about work as imagined versus work as done and the gap between them and understanding that gap from a socio-technical system perspective, right? And so what we think and how things go, they don't always go that particular way, right? So there was a little foul up here today, right? So many people came because they thought they were getting the A guest speaker, but they got the B. So Tim was planning for the B guest and only had the room set up for about 80 people, but there's 120 here. So work as imagined didn't meet work as done. So yeah. Right. Oh, and then we give personal. Don't you love when the CEO comes out and he says, well, I'm going to go out and do some observations out in the field. Nice white hat, wears a, breaks the high-vis vest out of the plastic, comes out and Captain Hindsight. Captain. Are there any CEOs in the room? Did the chancellor leave? Did the chancellor leave? Okay, good. Okay. I love this. You should get your CEOs for their birthday, Christmas, whatever you celebrate. You should get your CEOs this high-vis suit. Wouldn't that be great? It's only $10 extra. So I traveled to Australia quite a bit to do some work, and Australia's a funny place. It's a great place, but it's like everybody has high vis on in Australia. I'm like, and so like about 8 years ago, I said to my friend, I'm like, we need. Like, there's be like a high-vis suit. Like, how funny would that be? And I actually came back to East Carolina, met with an apparel, housing, fashion professor. She thought I was nuts. And now, there it is, right? We think work is simple, right? This is the work as imagined part. We imagine something simple. We do something and it's going to affect something like workplace safety and health. Well, I've done something, now it affects it, right? But what we don't realize, when we actually go out into the real world, things are complex. Things are ever-changing within the environment. No work situation is perfect, right? This is a really, I think, an interesting slide, or two slides to try to think about. Well, we're going to spend the next 7 hours talking about design thinking. Anyone ever heard the term design thinking? Where'd you hear the term design thinking?
Grad school.
Grad school, excellent. Where though? What do you remember? Design thinking? It's everywhere. It's everywhere these days. Design thinking. This is the design thinking process. This is what designers try to do, right? And again, design isn't about something that you're doing just to build a new building. Design is what you did this morning to get here, right? Simple design, maybe, but the key word here in this whole particular process, what's the key word? Empathize. What does empathy mean? Consider others' feelings. Sit with them and understand how they do it. So, sit with them. I like that. Sit with them and understand what they're doing, their issues, their problems. Whenever you're designing work in a complex socio-technical system, whenever you're designing new systems, do you empathize with others? This is a really difficult quality to have as a human. It really is. The most important thing we can do in the world of safety and health is empathize with the workers who have to deal with all that complex squiggly stuff going around in the previous slide. And sitting and listening, I love it. It's our perspective. We have different perspectives, all of us do. The people doing the hazardous work at the sharp end of your operations have a very unique perspective that you need to be sitting and listening to and respecting their views to be a better designer. We analyze job descriptions. So as an occupational safety and health program, we always think, oh, okay, well, careers are important and things of that nature. I saw a job description from New Zealand one time. Absolutely wonderful. I kept it because I'll probably never see one like it again. And it said, safety and health professional, blah, blah, blah. If you want to sit in the office, this isn't the job for you. If you want to, if you want to stick your nose in the rule books, this isn't for you. If you want to stick your head in procedures and write procedures, this isn't for you. But if you want to be out on the shop floor, making a difference with employees, listening, caring, they didn't use the word empathy, all this stuff, I'm like, whoa, what a great job description. What a great job description. So perspective is important. Now, right around the time that I was failing in the 90s, or the corporation that I worked for, were like, I guess getting there 3 weeks before startup didn't really kind of work. This is a chart. It's basically just a cost project lifecycle chart turned into instead of the word cost, it's about workplace safety and health. This was developed by a pulp and paper plant engineer who was building pulp and paper plants. I like to say pulp and paper plants. And he basically said the same thing I said. Oh, crap. I guess I started too late. But we're building the next pulp and paper plant. Wow, I can learn a lot from the mistakes I made, and I can learn a lot by talking to my maintenance mechanics and electricians and my operators and the people who are doing the work and the things they have to do on a daily and a non-routine basis. And we're going to try to incorporate that into the design, the conceptual and the detailed design of the next pulp and paper plant. When we do a design workshop, we give folks a warehouse. Americans love warehouses, don't we? We love warehouses. Does anyone work in a warehouse? Yeah. Is anyone working in a warehouse who's expanded or built in the last 5 years? I can't believe there's only about 7. We love warehouses. I grew up in central Pennsylvania, which for some reason, along Interstate 81, that's all it is warehouses. Wow. So we give folks a warehouse to deal with and to design differently in our design workshops. We have a whole class at ECU called Design for Health, Safety, and the Environment. But yeah, I love this chart, right? I love this chart. So it basically says, right, so typically we wait, right? We wait, right? And then you're probably there saying, oh yeah, well, we're doing our pre-job briefing. Yeah, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about planning and scheduling, things like that. I do work for NIOSH, National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. This photo was taken by the director of the construction sector of NIOSH, outside of her office. NIOSH is not an enforcement agency, oh, by the way. They're the education and research. So the question becomes, what do you see? But the question more becomes, how do you feel about it? What are you going to do about it? Right? So is it foreseeable? Could you anticipate this? Right? Well, what I see, I don't know about you, well, let's take a look at this, right? So who would put HVAC equipment on the edge of the roof? And who would put all the stuff that someone needs to get at on the fall side? And why isn't there somewhere where they can access it? Why isn't there electricity on there? Is that skylight fragile? But I can, Captain Hindsight, hello, I can identify all those things. But can I foresee them? That's our question. That's our challenge. That is the challenge for you all, I think, as you go through this conference and as you take what you learn back to your organizations. Can you anticipate? Can you better anticipate? Yes, you will not be perfect. And that's okay. That's okay. People make mistakes all the time. My youngest son made a mistake last night. He called me at 11:50 at night. No, not him. Because he was in bed, I think, too. The youngest son is still at home, who's 16. Hey, Dad, I'm like 2 hours into my sleep with some melatonin, by the way. I'm like, what? Dad, you should go outside and see Jupiter. He's going to get strangled when I get back. So we all make mistakes, right? I'm like, so I'm not going to yell because I'm like, oh, you know what? If he's into looking at planets at 11:50 on a Monday night, I'm all for it. Did he forget that I was here, kind of had to do something important? Yeah, kind of maybe, but that's okay. That's okay. And maybe he should be a bit earlier too, I'm not sure. But, right, so in hindsight, everything's foreseeable. But how can we plan and organize things better? And or, here's my challenge, or you're just thinking about this stuff because you're in some panel session with some guy from the coastal plains talking about design. Going back to this picture, right? What's the next job that they have to do other than getting themselves down? What's the next job you see? So they're going to get their stuff down, and then they're going to go do another job. They're going to change a light bulb. You see the light bulb? Oh, no, wait. Yes. You can barely see it right under the word participant. You have to be really good, see? They're going to change that light bulb. Whenever I go into a building, I always look at atriums and windows and lights and skylights and think about how do they get there? How do they do those things? How do they do that work? Did we think about that stuff? You're probably sitting there going, oh yeah, sure, Mike, whatever. My organization, we got it covered. We got it covered. We don't need this design and planning stuff. We got it covered. So I had the opportunity to spend about 3 months in Singapore. Has anyone ever been to Singapore? What is it about Singapore that you notice, or that you, other than the affluence and the disparity between the economic disparities, but I'm more thinking about the physical environment. It's very clean. I would eat off the subway floor. I mean, if I was really hungry. What else about?
You can't spit on the sidewalk.
You can't spit on the sidewalk. No, some bad things will happen. What else? Singapore is this very tropical, urbanized island state, city-state. Greeneries everywhere. Rooftop greenery, ledges, all over the places. Green, green, green. Well, I was studying green roofs and the safe design of green roofs, and I found Singapore has this organization and this one guy who was thinking the same thing that I was thinking. He wrote a couple of guidelines on the safe design of safe roofs. So I got to go to Singapore for about 3 months and study their urban greenery systems and what was kind of happening there. But this is kind of a bad example. Right? So this is on the 6th or 7th floor of a high school. There are these ledges all over. Beautiful. Beautiful, right? These ledges are all over the particular high school. Well, guess what? They have to be maintained, they have to be pruned, they have to be cut. Some of the times they have to be replanted. If they want them to look aesthetically pleasing, which, oh, by the way, they do, they need to be weeded. Things need to happen. So you can see there might be some access issues, maybe. So the building owner said, okay, well, I'll fix that. You have to squint a little bit. This eye bolt and this lanyard, which, oh, by the way, I don't know how you're going to get behind that particular greenery. I don't know how you're going to do that. But, oh, here's a tie-off now for you so you don't fall. This was put 3 months before I took the photo. And you got to squint. We can see it's already failing. Look at that. It's already failing. The difference between design and redesign. Sometimes when we redesign things, it doesn't quite work out. It doesn't quite work out the way we had hoped. Oh, there's an even closer shot. We could spend a whole 2 hours on looking at design's influence on accidents. And this is another area that I've done a lot of work in, and we could talk about that, but we're not going to, because I know Tim wants me to get done by 12:30. So we're going to show you some good things. We're going to try to show you some good things. A source for innovation and creativity. Can thinking about worker safety and health be innovative and creative? I hope so. Right? I hope so. It's about how safety integrates into the business, into the operations. It's not because you want to have some fancy ROI or whatever that stuff is, but you want to get invited to the meetings that matter. The worst thing you could do is build a new facility, put it in a new manufacturing line, and say, oh, yeah, can you go and inspect that for me? You want to be invited to the meetings where you're planning that new line. You want to integrate into your organization the function of workplace safety and health, and you want to do it early, right? This chart kept me up at night. Developed by an Australian colleague. It's basically that hierarchy of control flipped into a XY chart that basically says, yeah, you know what? Eliminating hazards is really, really hard. Changing the way we work, really, really hard. But the creative potential is there. We can fundamentally change work, make it better, right? The ergonomics. Ergonomics is literally the study of work. We are all ergonomists because we all study work. It's really easy to give somebody that high-vis suit, sit in your office and copy the OSHA legislation. It's easy to do those things. It's hard to get out on the floor and listen with people, work with people, show empathy, and learn from that and bring it back into your organization, to work above the line and be creative. Now we're going to show you an example. If we have time, we'll show you 2 examples. A gas station canopy. This is from Australia, so they call it a petrol station canopy. Gas station canopy. I mean, they're all the same. I mean, yeah, there's different letters on top and different colors, but every gas station canopy is basically the same. Whether it's 4 pumps or 8 pumps or 12 pumps, or some rest stops have 84 pumps, but it's all a roof and a couple of sticks. I mean, let's be honest. That's all it is. Well, the reports come back to this design and construction firm. Well, Shell says, well, you know what? People are dying on our sites. They're falling, building these things. They're getting seriously injured due to fall from height. Can you do something? So they did their design reviews, they brainstormed, they talked about the typical things that you might be thinking in your head right now. Oh, well, I can design in anchor points and horizontal lifelines and all this kind of stuff. And then they were thinking about, well, can we eliminate it? Well, you can't really eliminate it. I mean, you know, how can we do that? Well, I guess someone was kind of walking their dog one day, and then they said all of a sudden, well, yeah, we can. Oh, this is the typical way that you might construct that. They said, let's build it at ground and jack it up. And it worked. More expensive up front. More expensive up front. Obvious after the fact. When I show this example, people say, oh, yeah. Well, no kidding, Mike. Well, then how come they weren't doing it? How come you're not doing it? Well, why aren't we doing it then if it's obvious? Oh, yeah. So they jack it up. And here it is at the final stage before it gets jacked up. Shell of Asia patented this. Because with the design and construction firm, through the contract, Shell of Asia owned all the patents that would come out of the intellectual property of those particular projects, not the design and construction firm. But this is why. Now, this is just one example of how thinking about workplace safety and health early can be creative and innovative. Now, this doesn't get your CEOs and the people in those high-vis suits juiced up about workplace safety and health. This should reduce the critical path of construction timeline. If you're in the construction sector, you know nothing is more expensive than time, schedule, time to completion, critical path. Wow. Huge example. Yeah, so it's obvious after the fact. I'm going to move on from that. I want to draw your attention to the bottom of this slide. This was on the design and construction firm's marketing website. We're doing things differently here. You want to hire us? Because we do things differently, here's some. This wasn't the only example. Our engineers and our architects and our team, we're doing things differently here. Really interesting. When I saw this, I was like, wow, this is going to change the way we, but not many organizations are really taking this kind of on. Even where there is legislation, they don't. Do I have time? Sure, why not? So Singapore, so things are, so the owner of this particular green wall wants things to be aesthetically pleasing. This is in a hospital. Well, you need to maintain it. It needs to be weeded, it needs to be replanted, it needs to be fertigated. That's a fun word too, fertigated. That's what they say in Singapore, I don't know, fertigated. It needs to be fertigated, it needs to be taken care of. It's not maintenance free. It's not maintenance free. So some things you might be thinking of. The design team. Again, this is crucial. No one thought about safety. That's the trick the hidden trick in this entire presentation. I think of this entire conference. This is not about safety. It's about work. Safety scientists study two things. They study when things go wrong and everyday work. We want you to study everyday work more than you study when things go wrong. There was no safety professional in this design meeting when they're trying to come up with these particular designs. There's a bunch of architects and a horticulturalist. Said, well, let's put some access behind these. Let's put them on French doors. Let's work with the Singapore Building and Construction Authority to see if we can develop a guardrail system that when you open these French doors, we don't need a lifeline and a full body harness to protect us from falling out. Which that was the first iteration of this design. They said, well, we need to put a horizontal lifeline in. And someone said, why? Let's make it really easy for people to do their job. Let's arrange conditions for people to be successful. Let's empathize with them. Let's go through that design thinking process. Let's understand what the prototype is and how we can maybe change that, what its advantages and disadvantages are. Let's go back and redefine the problem and re-empathize with those people who have to do that particular work. One example. So, as I close, should have done the 8-hour workshop. Because there's really homework involved with that. Don't think you can write everything down. Work is complex. As soon as you think and you believe you can write everything down, you're in big trouble, I think. From a design perspective, from a work planning perspective, from a communication perspective, from a trust and empathy perspective. You can't write everything down. You have to be constantly learning and listening, sitting with the people who are doing the work, taking that information in and arranging conditions for them to be successful through better design, better conditions of work, changing scheduling. It's about finding out what we don't know. Nobody in a design meeting sits with a checklist and goes through things. It's an idea list. And if you put those words together, idealist, yeah. It's hard work to get there. No one says it's easy, but that's why you get paid the big bucks. It's an idea list. That hierarchy of controls is an idea list. Right? So behavior, from my perspective, is a symptom of something wrong within the system that we can learn from. So we can blame or we can learn. I don't think you can do both. I really don't think you can do both. Am I going to blame my youngest son for calling me at 11:50? Guess what? If I do that, maybe he won't call me at 10:50 or at 9:50 because of the negative influence and thing that I am putting on him. So I'm glad I'm here and not there. So I'm kind of thinking through how thinking through how I'm going to parent now when I go home, Tim. So you can blame or you can learn, right? I don't think you can do both. And we certainly can't anticipate and foresee if we're blaming. So learn more. Arranging conditions for workers to be successful. That's what safe design is. And just one more parting shot. So we're all designers, I think is what that said. We can be designers, right? And so when I think about traditional things that we do in safety and health, I think about, the investigations, how we use that word human error. It's about inspections, it's about observing and auditing, it's about compliance. Probably needed in some particular form or fashion. But I'd like you to think about shifting to the right side of the chart. Understanding work as imagined versus work as done and performance variability. Because guess what? When workers don't follow the rules and they don't get hurt and they got the job done, your organization celebrates them. Either directly or indirectly. They're celebrating. But as soon as they get hurt, throw them under the bus. Right? So performance variability, changing that mindset, learning about work. It's a conversation. It's sitting and listening with people. I like to say to our safety professionals in our program, you need to become a mini ethnographer. An ethnographer embeds themselves into the culture and they learn about that culture. They're empathetic. They listen. They talk. These are the roles of a health and safety professional, the roles of anybody within the field trying to impact workplace safety and health. It's about being empathetic. Humble Inquiry, another great book. Has anyone ever read the book Humble Inquiry? Edgar Schein. Great book, another great book to read. So go to Amazon and buy these books. None of them are, I'm an avid reader, and I love to take different ideas and just throw them out there. And Humble Inquiry is a great, great book. So learning teams is another way, shifting from the safety committee, learning teams. Okay? Well, it wouldn't be a presentation, Tim, without a plug for the ABET accredited, the Accreditation Board for Engineering and Technology, one of only 3 ABET accredited master's programs in the country for occupational safety. You can go on there. We're doing, we have our graduate program. We really do focus on the socio-technical systems of work. Some of our students will tell you our system safety course is like no other system safety course that's out there. And so this is my, oh man, we need to get that. This is my parting joke. It's better than Sean's. Where's my glasses? We got to get that thing up there. Well, okay, I'll just, so, so the patient says to the psychologist, so you got the joke already? It took me 20 seconds, quite frankly. No, thank you. If I lie down, we'll be here forever. Now, it took me a little bit. No, it's fine. It's fine. We can just go to the next slide. It's all good. So thanks. We got 7 or so. I mean, if you want to do Q&A or something, or chat
Not
about
bad
stuff.
for the second string. The Cowboys won with Cooper Rush last night. Yeah. Before we throw some questions in, I want to ask Steve Tipton to talk about his project that you did for Behavior University, where he saw a behavioral problem and did a design solution. You mind chatting about it? Yeah, I'll give you the mic. Steve? There we go.
Really the opportunity that we had was really geared toward, can you hear me okay? Okay. And really the design that we had was, how can we quantify our productivity? And really focusing on that, we designed in safety as the main emphasis for that, and really engaging with our employees, and having a environment to where we could sit down, and when we had a safety opportunity to be able to speak with those employees and have them really and have frank conversations regarding them and actively engaging them into the design solution.
Yeah, I think that's great. It's an example of that employee engagement bringing into the design. The Intel Corporation, about 20 years ago, brought up their workers from Arizona to their new fab in Oregon. They flew the workers up for 2 weeks to engage with those designers. Great example. Thank you.
Other examples? Any questions? Chris? Yeah.
It's a good, if you were able to back up to that air conditioning slide, I think it's, most employees, the design's gonna happen, whether you, because they've gotta get a job done, they've got work to do. So,
Well, yeah, I mean,
yeah, so if you pull that picture back up,
I don't think I can.
that's fine.
It's a design problem. I think we should blame the operator, but.
There we go.
Yeah, here. So what really struck me about this picture was the question, how many times do you think that guy's drop board fell off the roof before he decided to tie it to the ladder? Right, so I mean, he's trying to fix his own problem. Now, probably not the best way to go about doing that, but I think it's, most of your associates in your plant, they'll find a way to design something into their process what they perceive at least will make their job easier, better, faster. And if they don't have the right tool, like battery-powered equipment, so you don't even need a drop,
Yep.
but it's that idea thinking. But you can see he's in a bad situation. He's
Yeah.
trying to solve a problem himself by.
And so we can learn from that, right? We can learn from that. We, the collective we. Yeah,
Excellent point.
this gentleman does not have the jurisdictional authority to make change. He was told by his crew leader, who was told by the person who bid the job, this is what we're doing it for, go do it. So I like to call it guided adaptability.
Well, on this slide, I probably guess what the HVAC company's idea was when they were willing to put the HVAC units there. They're just thinking remove and replace with a crane and not worried about repairs happening to them.
Why would I think about that? Right. So, but if I'm a building owner, I should care about that.
The building owner and the original design.
If I'm somewhere else in the world, like Australia, the person who designed this would be held at some percent liable if something would happen, because they would say this is foreseeable. And there's cases in Australia just like. Any?
All right.
Coffee.
There you go. So let's give him a round of applause. Thank you, thank you, thank you.